totally changing the subject, but am I? I may have discovered the largest Mandela effect ever.
Oh my God, I was just looking at those yesterday. I can't even believe you're bringing this up.
After what triggered the whole, you and I were on a whole thing
talking about a certain set of people that like to wear small hats,
the little people,
and how they were included in things, and how the Magna Carta actually looks like it was quite literally constructed to benefit them the most. And then you went off and you did some digging, and
I follow trails. So when I start researching, all I do is I start pulling up information, and when something pings, I go follow that trail. And I was going around, and it was like, oh, did you? And I'm reading shit out to him. He's off on the other side of the room doing stuff, and I'm reading, going, oh my God, did you know this and this and this and this and this? And then we have the Knights Templar, and that's all linked in here, etc. So it all leads me down to the question of the Jews and the Magna Carta. That all leads me down to, I'm looking at the Magna Carta, and I'd been discussing King John, his wife was Isabella of Aragon. And I was discussing that her family,
what up to that though?
Hold on. Listen, this is too much to unpack. I'm horribly trying to simplify this.
Okay.
Exactly. Stop. Her family, her dad had been raised by the Knights Templar and had been held hostage after his father had been killed by another king who was trying to take over their land. And Pope Innocent III, who is, there goes my glasses, who was the king the Pope who signed the Magna Carta with King John, was the one who actually gave him over to the Knights Templar to be raised. So there was me and the Knights Templar stuff. I get down. So I'm researching the Magna Carta because I'm going back through this whole thing because it's Innocent III. And first of all, there is some twitchy stuff about the changing of history with Innocent III, because I'm like, he was called Innocent III, but he has more bastard children than you can possibly count, and that he basically set up two of his sons to be bishops and cardinals. So, like, really. In researching him, I come across a paragraph about the fact that after the signing of the Magna Carta, King John petitioned Pope Innocent III to have the Magna Carta annulled because it was signed under duress. And Innocent III annulled the Magna Carta 3 months after it was written and signed in August of 1215, 3 months after the signing of the Magna Carta, Innocent III annulled it. It does not exist. There is no Magna Carta. It's
not binding anywhere.
I literally went, my head exploded. My head literally went boom. And I literally started, and I was like manic, going through, pulling up documents. In this reality we now live in, the Magna Carta does not exist. It was rescinded. It was annulled. Now, in the major article that I was reading, that one of the ones that I dug up, which was from the British National Library, says its final paragraph is, the Magna Carta was the greatest export that England gave to the rest of the world.
Right.
Okay? Because every law system in Canada, in America, in all the Commonwealth countries are based on common law from the Magna Carta. So therefore, all their fucking legal systems are fucking defunct because the Magna Carta doesn't exist.
Oh my God.
You need to
but it might as well be toilet paper.
It is paper. This is okay.
So you got to find out why and how they pulled this off.
Hang on.
Okay, hold on.
Hang on.
Hold on.
Wow.
Hold. I want to finish because there's another little piece.
Donnie's going. Let Donnie go.
Okay? There's a lot of more pieces. One of the pieces is that Pope Innocent III set precedent that any contract signed under duress would therefore be void and null. Any contract signed under, and it's a papal at the height of his power. Innocent III was the most powerful pope in the entirety of the Middle Ages. He told every king and queen who they could marry and who they couldn't marry. He told them what they were allowed to do, what they weren't allowed to do. Like, he literally ruled Europe with an iron fucking fist.
Mhm.
The legal precedent is set in that point that any contract can be made void and null under duress. It's an ecclesiastical precedent. Okay?
Read that. Green Ozone just put in that they have off Google.
No, this is the thing. Green, this is what they tried to say. It was reissued.
Or ratified.
It cannot be. A contract, once broken, cannot be reissued, especially since the two original signatories died 2 months later. So there is no reissuing of the Magna Carta. You can't reestablish it. It cannot be, oh, well, let's just do it over again. Okay?
No,
It cannot be done because legally it was annulled by the main signatory under the request of the secondary signatory, one being a king, the other one being the Pope. It is gone. You cannot bring it back. So they can say things like, oh, it was reissued.
Yeah, they did it.
It can't be. It cannot be. Under law, it cannot be. Especially because the two original signatories were dead. They both died in September and October of 1215. They died within 4 weeks of each other. Okay?
Wow.
So they could have come together and said, hey, let's go with something new. Hey, let's make a new thing. We were not going to call it the Magna Carta. We're going to call it the whatever. And they could have, but they didn't. They tried to you have to understand the politics at the time, right? These barons, they wanted this. They were trying to force this through. Now, all of a sudden, it's annulled. And the two people who are signatories, the prime signators, are both dead. And they turn around and reissue it, whatever. It is legally incapable of doing. Cannot be. But
the second reissuance would have the Pope involved with it.
That's I've never, like, this reissuance in 2016 12. Yeah, I know. I keep saying 2016.
When I learned about the Magna Carta, I was under the impression that it was ratified in 1216. They wrote it in 1215, and then they revisited it in 1216 and kind of buffed it a little.
But this is the thing: you cannot rewrite a contract that has been annulled.
And then they
You
killed
start
him.
over.
You know they killed him.
Well, when they died within 4 weeks of each other, Innocent III and John I died within 4 weeks of each other. Oh, literally just a few weeks after it was annulled. Yeah. Big questions. Big fucking questions.
That was probably a big no-no.
Okay, so this is the piece. Now, the other piece to this that is important, and this is why I get fucking hate mail from all the truther groups, because I like to go in and burst their fucking bubbles when they all start going, common law, we are free men, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, no, you're not a free man. The barons are the free men, and the merchants, i.e. the fucking Jews who bought their freedom, are free men. You are a serf. You do not have any status. The Magna Carta had nothing to do with you ever. You were a serf. You are not a free man. So from that whole aspect, when all these groups start talking common law and how they're going to use this and they're going to do that, I'm like, it's all fucking bullshit, because you're basing it off a misconception of what a free man is. The free men in London who were on the sides with the barons were the bankers and the high-paid merchants. And do you want to guess of what religion they all followed?
Judaism.
So when we look at this and we say the merchants, the very powerful bankers, and the barons tried to strong arm King John into this declaration. And it got annulled. And then all of a sudden you have both signatories are dead. And yet they try to carry on and pretend that this is not, that this is still a legal document. This is still something that they can work with. Now, here's the thing. Why would they have not tried to do a new one? Would it not have made sense to just, the next king is King Henry first, Henry the Second, Henry the First, Henry the Second, Henry the Third. He was an infant. So they could have literally been like, okay, well, the baby can't sign, but he's got the so-and-so is going to be like Lawton.
Queen or King
Lawton? Is it Lawton? Who was the fucker who was pushing that Lawton. He worked on the Pope's side, who was pushing it. His name's gone right out of my Stephen Lawton, I think.
Mm.
Why could he not have then just gone to like the whoever was standing for the king, the infant king, and said, right, you're going to sign this over, etc. Why didn't they get the new Pope to do it? They didn't. They tried to make the original stand, which tells me there was some shenanigans going on right then and there, just from the fact of they were trying to get the original one to stand, even though it had been annulled. Can't give His Majesty a crayon. That's right, Jimmy. He was only 2. I mean, he could have signed his name when he was 2, sure. This is what I'm saying. This, getting back to what I said, I have been studying the Magna Carta for years. 4 years. And had never, ever have I heard anything about an annulment of the Magna Carta happening literally less than 3 months after it was originally signed on June 25th of 1215. Yes, Nadia.
So Danny, while you were speaking, I was just doing a Google search on this, and every article that I came up with talked about the fact that Pope Innocent annulled it, that the king didn't like it once it was enforced and appealed to the Pope, and the Pope annulled it. So if I'm understanding you correctly, when you have looked and researched the Magna Carta in the past, this information didn't come up for you.
No, this didn't happen. This was not. This is a Mandela effect. Like, this is all of a sudden now in this reality, the Magna Carta was annulled, and the trickle, like,
That's crazy.
literally,
That's
my head
crazy.
is still like geeking on this one, because when we've talked about so many Mandela effects, like things like the Lord's Prayer and all these types of things in the changes, this one has massive ramifications, like global fucking ramifications across the world. Right, Francesca?
And what's coming up for me are newspaper articles from 2014, 2015, from The Guardian and The Independent, saying that Pope Innocent III rescinded it.
Right. And like, so I was involved, just to further this, in 2015, I was watching all the shit because there was the big anniversary of the Magna Carta. It was a huge deal in England. There was all these things going on. And that's when I was still friends with Sasha Stone. And he was launching the ITNJ on June 25th of 2015 to piggyback on the signing of the Magna Carta. And that was all of this. So I had done massive research on this. So this is a huge change.
This is huge.
Fucking huge.
So then my question would be, if this is the truth, of whatever perception of truth and reality is, then how can whoever's in charge use this to propagate everything going into another system? Because that means that since there's nothing to stand on, that means you have to bring up something else, and you use this as an excuse for that, which never existed before. That would be my take.
That's what I'm saying. What are the ramifications in here?
Oh my God, I can't.
And the precedent on the duress is bigger, is massive too. Like what Ben just said, the precedent of overturning this contract, annulling a contract that was signed under duress.
But that's even in Islamic law,
massive.
which predates Magna Carta. So that principle of consent.
There's a couple pieces though, right? So what he's really saying is for the last few decades, a lot of us have been using the Magna Carta because it is the basis for the common law. However, anything signed under duress, ergo, a fucking sword at your throat or 7 or 12 baron swords at your throat, null and void any kind of contract. But you've got to remember, post that, to which the system is actually attached, is the tea companies of the world.
Oh, absolutely.
And that's what happened. So the laws aren't set up via Magna Carta. They are set up via contract law. But that then means if you can get precedent on duress and prove that you have created a straw man, let's say, under duress, or those sorts of things under duress, that null and voids all of those contracts.
Yep.
That's very true.
Yes. And this, Danny, as you said, when you were introducing this subject, you're changing the topic, but you're not. Because it boils down to what has a life or reality in this realm and what doesn't. So what today actually hangs on the Magna Carta, whatever it is, it'll be in the realm of legalities, not in the realm of, in terms of formalities and forms of legal fictions. That's what will hang on the Magna Carta, not anything that is human.
Yeah.
If I were to talk about myself as being sovereign or any of those things, I wouldn't be basing that on legalities. I would be basing that on what came before legalities, which is ethics.
Right. But what we have, and I've seen this now cycle through so many iterations of this, is we have groups who are trying to break out, who are trying to break free, who are trying to free themselves of their straw man, are trying to free themselves of the ridiculousness of governments, etc. And I agree with you 100%. I'm a living, breathing human being, and that's what it comes down to. But in order to do that, you have to stand in a court of law, right? Like that. And of course, as soon as you enter the court of law, you're in their circus and you're going to lose. But people are trying to create the pathway to get to that place. They're trying to create a pathway. I've got a friend here, and that's all he does is helps people with dealing with the council taxes and dealing with utilities and dealing with these stupid speeding tickets and these stupid fresh air ULA stuff and all of that. Ben has spent fucking the better part of a decade working on a whole pile of this shit as well. There is a lot of people, and it keeps cycling around. So again, since 2020, there's been another huge push where all these people are coming forward, trying to put forward legal pathways to enable to exit the system, to free themselves, so to speak, right? And that is one of the pieces. This is one of the pieces they keep using is the Magna Carta and the whole thing of like free men, etc. And it is a fallacy, and it will always fail.
Even if somebody finds a path out, it's like the original Constitution is manipulated and turned into this fucking thing that is used against the people. And all they have to do is see that one person has figured it out, and they'll just close that loop down.
Yep. But,
right.
And we've got in England, because Gail was looking this up for me earlier when I was freaking over with Gail and Anne going, oh my God. And she said there's only 4 clauses of the Magna Carta that are still standing, ostensibly, in British law. I don't know what the four clauses are. I don't remember now. But actually, now none of them do. But here's the thing, Ben, going back to what you're saying about contract law, because I agree. But if they have this Magna Carta, and we know that they go in and they ratify a change. So there was a bunch of them done in the 1400s. I can't remember what the date was, but in the 1400s, there was a bunch of them done. I think Henry VIII had something to do with one of them. There were certain changes that are made, but they're made based on, and then new laws are created, and it becomes the inverted pyramid, right? So they start with this law here, and then from that law comes all these other laws that comes out like this.
Right.
But if this law here doesn't stand, and you pull that brick, it all collapses. So even under contract law, how many pieces of contract law are still based upon stuff that was in the Magna Carta?
Most.
That's what I'm saying. Wow.
Not all, but I would say most.
Wow.
So like this.
By most, Mark, do you mean contract law that you could argue in a corporate court rather than
we're talking historical contract law? Like, so Ben would talk about basically the tea companies is what Ben said. The East India and the West India tea companies, etc. Ben can talk for hours on that one. He's far more knowledgeable than I am on that.
But Ben, aren't those that is rooted in the corporate model, right? That's absolutely rooted in the corporate model.
That's what creates the corporate model.
Exactly.
That's what created the corporate model. So it's not rooted in the corporate model. The corporate model sits on top of that.
Right.
The tea companies come first and then the corporate model come
after.
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
I thought the tea companies were the first manifestation of the corporate model.
So Nadia, they are the first. Basically, they are the first companies floated on a public private stock. That's what they are created for.
Mm-hmm.
That's why the Dutch did it first, and it was basically under the premise of, it's like, hey, we've got heaps of fucking boats, but we've got no money. How do we smash people with our boats? Oh, we'll get people to invest because we've got all these boats that are worth stuff. And then they use that money to go and rape and pillage. And then
that's the corporate model.
Right. Well, it sort of, that's the basis for it. See, and then what they did is they changed the incentive from conquer to money. So then instead of the open raping and pillaging, it's because, well, actually it's the bottom end, right? That's what it's now about. But it's within that structure that you then become and need a straw man. Outside of that, you don't need it.
Yes, that's true.
I think we're probably talking about the same things, but you're just using different language to describe it, Ben. Because the point is that the company, that the tea company, was regarded as a separate legal personality to its owners and the people who were working for it, right? So
it was a person. It was a person. Okay.
Exactly.
Contract law, okay, 95%, and I think I'm being very conservative on that, was based on strawman and corporate law. And what that was is the original contract had 5 areas that had to be satisfied for it to be a valid contract.
Yeah, we talked about this a couple of weeks ago, didn't we?
Correct. The problem is that with the strawman and the corporate contracts, they started introducing language which was loopholes to, as Ben said, rape and pillage, charge interest, or do usury, or do something, and that these were all loopholes of how to get into or out of contracts. They were all legal constructs based on the 5 that nobody agreed to. And so, therefore, the Magna Carta, being null and void, basically makes 95 or more % of the contracts that are out there, LLCs, corporate structures, S corps, C corps, all those things completely null and void. They can no longer exist.
I'm going to have to look at the Magna Carta now.
I would disagree on that, Mark.
Because that doesn't sound right to me, because my layman's understanding of the Magna Carta is that it stated that the king was subject to the law just like everyone else.
Well, there's a lot more.
That's my layman's.
But there's a lot more to it, and this is what you can go in and look at. Relatively, I believe there's actually a scanned copy of the original version in the British Library that you can pull up online. It's all in Latin, of course, but you can find very, very old copies. There's several. There were 19 original copies made, and they were sent to the 19 biggest cathedrals in England.
Wow.
So if you look, there's several of the cathedrals still have their original copies.
But if Western governments saying this, if Western governments and commonwealths and common law were based on the Magna Carta, which was null and void, does that not?
Okay, Ben, take the joint out of your mouth and actually answer.
So what I'm saying basically is, for however long we've been saying that the governments have kind of are held by the Magna Carta, and therefore the Magna Carta and what it stood for is part of what the laws are that are built on our lands, and therefore we have a common law. What I'm actually saying is no, and COVID in its metadata analyzing showed us all where and which country has what rights.
Yep.
And what actually we are living under is the tea companies, and that is how all the systems actually work. That's how time actually works. That's how the straw man actually works, is because of the tea companies. Because prior to that, we just bartered shit. We just literally bartered shit. If we had a bit of money, we'd barter that bit of money. But if we had no money, I'd barter my potatoes for some pork or whatever, right? But to create the system, you need business. And that's where corporate and the corporations originally start. And then those corporations then set up the countries, not the people. The constitutions are the running documents of the company. It is not, it says for and by the people, but that doesn't mean what we think it actually means.
Not us people, not for and by us people.
Because just quickly, because if you follow the West Virginia Tea Company documents set up by King James the First, I think it is,
which you should all know, King James the First.
What you will find is the United States was already called the United States, and it was a company set up under the West Virginia Tea Company for and by the shareholders and stakeholders in that company. From the so what I've thought from the get-go is, from the birth of the United States, it has always been that. Sorry, go.
Okay, so I've got a question. So when Trump considered the United States Government Inc. Charter of 1871 bankrupt and dissolved, was that incorporated government that we technically live under in this country, US, was it part of that West Virginia Tea Company?
Depending on the naming of the entity that was bankrupted, because you've got to remember the United States has been bankrupted at least 4 times.
Yeah, multiple times, and they just reincorporate.
Yeah.
So
this is the 1871 incorporation of the United States of America.
Well, I have a copy of the incorporation paper standing right now, and the United States of America is a not-for-profit religious organization. I have those papers. They're in the fucking library. The UnFuckers library, I have the copies of them. Feel free to go peruse. It is a not-for-profit religious corporation. That is what the United States of America is currently documented as a corporation.
Oh my
And
God.
I'd add in there that the holding company is still the West Virginia Tea Company, held by the royal family in the UK.
Probably.
And it's just doing like the LLC thing and bankrupts in every X.
Yep.
Agreed.
Yep.
Wow.
That's one of those pieces that most people don't. I had a hard time back like 15 years ago. I can remember there's a whole thing in the Canadian news about how certain ministries within the Canadian government was like the employment ministry had a huge amount of extra money. Like they had massive amounts of extra money. And the medical and education were like running in the black. Like they were seriously needed more money. And I was like, well, that doesn't, like what, they just take the money from the employment guy, the employment ministry, and just give it to education and health. Doesn't that make sense? Just makes sense if you're looking at a government as this one big lovely pie. And it wasn't until I fucking realized that every single ministry is its own corporation and every single province and state is its own corporation that all of a sudden you go, well, of course, that's why the Ministry of Employment is not going to give some of its flush funds that it has huge amounts of to the Ministry of Health, because it's a completely different corporation. They don't run under the same charter or anything. And that was like a huge, like when I all of a sudden realized that, you go, oh, now I understand everything going on financially within all, like around the world, all these questions that I've had over 20, 30 years. Well, why do they do? Well, but that doesn't make, then when you all of a sudden go, every single one of these entities is its own separate individual corporation, all of a sudden a lot of what they do makes a lot of sense.